from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Ahead today, K-State's Terry Griffin joins us. He'll talk about the economic feasibility of autonomous farming systems, which have become the premier topic at several precision agricultural technology conferences Terry has participated in this winter. Also today, from the Farm Service Agency, David Schemm will be the first contributor to a new bi-weekly series right here called FSA Coffee Talk, where specialists from the FSA state office will pass along the latest USDA program details. And K-State's Charlie Lee will be in this week to take a look at an effort to conserve the Texas horned lizard, which is commonly found in a large part of Kansas. All that and more coming up on Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Thanks once again for joining us for another Agriculture Today. Last week, you'll recall, we briefly went over the happenings at the recent Kansas Agricultural Technologies Conference with K-State's Lucas Haig. I want to expand that conversation a bit more, for our guest now has been on the circuit, traveling and attending several meetings, not only here in Kansas, but beyond in recent months, and talking with producers and others about what are the more topical things in the arena of precision agriculture currently. Terry Griffin is with us, precision agricultural economist, K-State Research and Extension. So have you been on the fast track here, Terry, in recent weeks?
Yeah, I put a lot of miles underneath me in the last couple of weeks. Last week was a good example of that. Drove to Jamestown, North Dakota. The 9th annual Precision Ag Summit was in Jamestown. If you've not been there, this time of year, it's one of the colder places in the United States. But we have a really good group of people interested in precision farming. Had a really nice panel discussion that I moderated, as well as delivering the keynote about how Kansas farmers are adopting agricultural technology, precision ag. On the way back, I swung by Kearney, Nebraska for the Nebraska Crop Management Conference, which has included NETA, which has been somewhat similar to CARTA, but NETA was built around ag tech and on-farm experimentation, and so I was able to do that last week as well.
And then you took part in the Kansas Agricultural Technologies Conference, sponsored by, in part, the Kansas Ag Research and Technology Association, or CARTA.
Yeah, definitely. So I got to meet people who actually use the technologies that we've been studying.
And on that, wanted to have you by today to pass along things that you picked up attending these and other meetings of late. What's hot, if you will, in precision agricultural technology, in as far as drawing attention of producers?
So one of the things that caught the attention of a lot of producers at CARTA was the protein quality sensor that was on the harvesters, which has had a bigger influence in other countries, given that there are premiums to be gained from that. So that attracted interest not only in the device, but renewed some interest in, hopefully, markets may evolve to where that has value. Autonomous is the buzzword for 2019-2020 winter meetings. Whether it's driverless tractors or small robots that replace large equipment, automated robots are the hot topic. In the last 5-6 years, a lot of the meetings I've looked at drones and small unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, which are in many ways autonomous, but we're talking about ground-based rigs that plant, harvest, spray, and that's the hot topic these days.
Of course, you study these things from the economic standpoint. Are these systems, and we could talk about their performances and what they can accomplish, but are these systems affordable in today's agricultural economy climate?
They will be. Today, Maybe not. So, for instance, a few weeks ago, we had the Beltwide Cotton Conference in Austin, Texas. There's a lot of folks from Kansas there. Kansas is now a top 15 cotton-producing state. There's a large push to move away from the conventional status quo harvesting of cotton with $1 million machines that do one thing in one crop. And the cotton industry is funding research in can we use small modulated groups of robots to harvest. And one of the projects that I'm doing is looking at the capacity of the current status quo picker harvester versus many smaller units, and how many units will it take to be similar to the status quo. And a lot of our estimates are somewhere between 80 and 100 units could be used and still have similar capacity as the current $1 million system. And these things can be much less expensive, and that's sort of the driving force. Can we get the dollars per acre cost down below what it is today?
So it has potential in that respect.
It has lots of potential. The engineers are making really good progress. Glenn Rains from University of Georgia demonstrated with a video his system that picks one bow at a time. It's really slow, but that's fine. We're allowing these modulated robots to be much slower. One reason is they can enter the field much sooner and in different weather conditions than a really heavy $1 million machine. Some of the other limitations, it's a matter of time, but battery power or energy source is a question, and we think it's going to be electric. And currently our batteries are not sufficient to carry out what the engineers would like to do, so we're expecting as batteries to get better, autonomy will become better. And if you think of groups like Tesla, that exists because batteries got better, and I think they may have been a catalyst for development of those batteries as well, but it's just a matter of time.
Now, when we talk about autonomous equipment for a specific crop like cotton, that may be one thing, but our more widely planted crops, wheat, corn, sorghum, soybeans, where, for instance, a combine can perform multiple tasks. Back to that question, can an autonomous substitute be practical economically?
And think about the grain, how much volume and weight per acre that corn, soybean, wheat produces relative to cotton. And one of the benefits that, and this is, we were calling it science fiction, it may not be that far out though, is what if instead of having large cotton ginning facilities locally, what if they were hyper-local in that you could the modulated swarm of robots could have itself a cotton gin at the end of the row. So instead of moving seed cotton to the gin, cotton lint can move in one direction and seed can move in another wherever it's needed.
The gin comes to you, in effect?
The gin is part of the saying, if you've got dozens of robots that are harvesting cotton, then it would stand to reason that, this trailer of bots could, in fact, have a small gin associated with it. When we talk about these things in a futuristic sense, some people get a little aggravated. We don't want gins to go away as we know them. But then another group would say, we see benefit in doing this because now we can have some more efficiencies in the field.
But that may not be applicable to our other row crops and our small grains.
Right. Because it is very different than the quality concerns are different in those commodities as well.
But it creates interesting dialogue.
It does. And if you remember back to the 1990s, early 2000s, one of the responses a lot of farms had about automated guidance was, I can drive my own tractor really straight. So, I don't see the value of that. And some people may have been insulted by this concept. But fast forward 20 years, it'd be hard-pressed to remove that technology from most farms. They not only see the value in economic sense of reducing overlap and saving on seed and CPCs, chemicals, and so forth, but just the quality of life is so much better. People would not want to give it up today.
Right. So 20 years hence, who knows where we'll be. This may be the origin of that transformation into autonomous. I want to ask you one last thing here, Terry. One of the persistent issues in recent years with regard to precision technologies, the data collected, how to maximize its utility, how to use it. Upon your travels and meeting with producers lately, are there any resolutions to that question?
So, really interesting study that was presented at the American Ag Econ meetings a few years ago, and the paper is being considered for publication right now. I am not one of the authors, but I have looked at the paper for the authors a few times. And this is from USDA, from the ARMS survey. They look at technical efficiency, and they said if you have yield and soil maps, that your technical efficiency increases by 0.4 to 7.2%, and which could equate to about 5 to 10% increase in yield. So it's a value of information study. So the value of information of having a yield map, soil map, is that your technical efficiency could increase by as much as 7% for the farm. And this comes up over and over. People are constantly asking me, Griffin, what's the value of farm data? Let me ask in different ways, but that's essentially what it is. How much is farm data worth? And it's one thing to look at it in the field or within a farm of, this farm should expect to have an X percent increase in yield or profitability. But the value of farm data goes beyond the farm gates. There's others who are very interested in this, and we've seen trillions of dollars chasing farm data from venture capitalists, and they know there's value to it. The value of farm data is more than a summation of value within all farms, because the retailers are gaining, the cooperatives, manufacturers, and others who are working in data platforms.
So the scope of that value is expanding, and that's the point, that its worth is accelerating.
Yes, and you think of it this way, there's a pie, and we cut it up, and everybody at the table gets a piece of that pie. Mm-hmm. Some people get bigger piece than others. But what if that pie gets much bigger, and then we reallocate the size of each of those pieces, maybe include a few more people at the table? Mm-hmm. And we're kind of negotiating right now to see who gets how big of a piece.
It's always intriguing, though, to hear what some of the contemporary thinking in this area would be any given point in time. And you have more travels ahead, talking more about precision agricultural concepts and the economics associated with those. We always appreciate you coming by and letting us know the latest. So thanks for checking in with us.
Thanks, Eric.
Terry Griffin, precision agricultural economist with K-State Research and Extension, on this part of Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we've now for you the very first installment of what will be a regular feature here on the broadcast every Tuesday in this same time slot. We're calling it FSA Coffee Talk, and it'll feature those with the inside view on all things USDA program related here in the state of Kansas, out of the state headquarters of the FSA, the good staff that serve there. And it's sensible that to kick off this series, we've invited by the State Director of the Farm Service Agency, David Schemm. David, what we want to do is to provide an outlet for you and your folks to share information of high importance to our agricultural producers.
Absolutely, Eric, and very much appreciate it. It's kind of something I think we've been really meaning to do for quite some time, and been very gracious and allowed us the opportunity to come onto the show multiple times and to be able to talk about various things that we've got going on at FSA. But we kind of looked at, there's a lot of information out there from FSA that we're trying to cover. We want to make sure that we're keeping our producers informed as best as we can, and what a great opportunity to have a little bit of talk about FSA over a cup of coffee here. So a little FSA Coffee Talk going on here. So really excited about it. Good. We're going to be kind of rotating from our FSA standpoint. We're going to be rotating between our divisions. We have a farm program division and then a conservation price support division. We also have our loan division as well. And then, of course, we're going to have outreach. And we'll kind of work with both outreach and updates from me as well. So kind of looking to kind of cycle 4 different areas through as we go through the year.
And we appreciate you and your staff committing to this. Once again, pencil it in for every other Tuesday here on the broadcast at this very same time. So Our first order of business is to, naturally, look back. David, we do want to provide a perspective on FSA activities in 2019 in review. You had some important milestones to share there.
Yeah, absolutely. I always believe when you get to that, new year, Eric, it's always good. What my wife and I and family always try to do, kind of look back what you got done last year, and then also kind of look into the future and lay out some goals or plans for the future here. And so when I actually started running down through this list, it really astounded me what we've been able to do. This last year, we had a little over $200 million that went out in ARC PLC payments. Now, again, when I'm talking last year, I'm talking in 19, but we need to remember that was actually for 2018 payments. Again, we know we had that year delay. And then when we actually look at last year, we also need to remember that we're actually finishing up that 2018 MFP payment. Obviously, with the furlough that occurred, the government shutdown at the beginning of last year, the Secretary extended the deadline of that, reciprocal of the number of days that we were under furlough. But by the time we got said and done wrapping up 2018 MFP, for Kansas alone, we issued over $500 million for 2018 MFP payment. And then, of course, right now, which is kind of ongoing, Eric, but 2019 MFP payments, or MFP 2.0, as sometimes it's being referred to, again, it was based upon acres and not production like 2018 MFP, but they announced there was going to be 3 tranches. We've paid out 2 of the tranches. And so just those 2 tranches that we have actually paid out, it has been over $750 million. And there's some other programs there, but if I kind of roll that up all into one, FSA has issued in payments out to our producers this year right at $1.6 billion.
And that you share with the purpose of illustrating just how important that infusion is to the Kansas agricultural economy.
Absolutely. When we come in there and lay that in also with our farm loan program, right now our portfolio for our farm loan side, when we can add in all the aspects of it, we run right at a $1.2 billion portfolio. So when we look at what we have issued out there this last year for our various payments, as well as our loan program, FSA this last year had almost a $3 billion impact upon our Kansas ag economy. And the ag economy, generally is between an $18 and $19 billion industry. So when you look at $3 billion, it obviously goes to show the impact really that we have out there. And quite honestly, why we have great staff who are dedicated. I'm very much dedicated to make sure we're doing the best job we can do, because I realize the impact we have on producers.
That's the cap on 2019. Immediate business, David. Some deadlines coming up, not the least of which a deadline for enrolling in the General Conservation Reserve Program.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've opened up both a continuous and a general sign-up. The continuous does not have a deadline, but the general enrollment does have a deadline sign-up coming up here on February 28th. And so definitely encourage producers, get in there. If you have acres expiring, get in there, talk to our county offices, and start getting in that process of getting those acres enrolled again. We had several number of acres expiring over 17, 18, and 19, and those acres were offered a 1-year extension each year during the process of writing the new farm bill. Especially if they were less than a 15-year contract. So we had a lot of acres that expired over those years. Roughly last year it was like 120,000. In 18, I believe it was around 70,000. But in 2020, we have 500,000 acres of CRP expiring. And those are also have the option to roll. So we have almost 800,000 acres possible for re-enrollment across the state this year. The reason why I definitely want to mention this is of those possible 800,000 acres that we have that would re-enroll, I was looking at the numbers just the other day. We only have about 100,000 that have re-enrolled thus far. So really encourage producers, get in there, talk with your county office, and get signed up.
I want to stress once again, for those with 2020 expiration, they are eligible as well, so not to overlook this.
That is exactly right. So 17 through 19 acres are eligible, as well as 2020 acres that are expiring are eligible for sign up again, too.
So get your plans squared away. Therefore, that deadline is just a shade over a month away. Again, February the 28th. A little further down the calendar, but not all that much, the deadline for making enrollment decisions on either ARC or PLC. And again, an important business that shouldn't be put off to the last minute. David?
I absolutely really have appreciated working with a lot of our ag groups, commodity groups, as well as extension. I know there have been a lot of informational meeting for those producers to help aid them in their decision making. Eric, even on our own operation, we've jumped in there on that tool that extension put out there, done a great job. It's super easy to be able to utilize and really to walk through. My compliments to them and setting it up like they did, made it very user-friendly, let us make decisions pretty awful easy. County office as well can be able to run some tools and help producers come to a decision. But again, we really need producers to get in there and get signed up for it. I'll tell you this much from my perspective right now. I am very concerned by the numbers of enrollment I am seeing right now.
Slow.
Very, very slow. Our county office has been very active, reaching out, making phone calls. Producers, please respond. Please get in there and get signed up. And this is something concerning from our offices, so I would ask our producers out there, have a little sympathy for our local FSA people. They've got multiple deadlines for CRP. Obviously, we just got done talking about ARC PLC. Get in there and work with those offices and do get signed up so that they can help to manage that workload. As of today, right now, we only have 14% of our producers that have signed up for a program. So I know anecdotally the other day I attended the Kansas Commodity Classic. Again, very much appreciated extension, even making several made comments there as well. But even a raising of the hands by the audience about the number that signed up would for sure reinforce that percentage that we're sitting at.
So once more, don't delay much longer, if at all, on working toward making that final decision, ARC or PLC, and set up that meeting right away if you can. With your local FSA personnel, get that business taken care of. For one more item that will be on the agenda at FSA offices as well, and you're getting questions about this with some frequency too, the Market Facilitation Program third payment, or tranche as they call it. Details there are still pending, you say, David?
Exactly right. So I know the Secretary has told everybody that there will be a third payment, but as far as a specific date, we don't have a specific date yet. Our offices, we have not received any type of communication from the national office when exactly those payments will be coming. We do know that they are going to be soon. Eric, I know from the perspective of just kind of trying to work through the logistics that it is approved, but there's also a budget and a finance, and they've got to make sure that everything's in place there. I know National is very much working feverishly to try to get everything done from their perspective. They realize that a lot of our producers are in a position where they're, believe it or not, we are getting a little closer for spring. I know producers are starting to eyeball that spring of the year with a lot of expenses and could definitely use it. Again, I know the Secretary has announced that there would be a third tranche. Unfortunately, we just don't have a date other than to know it is coming pretty soon.
It's in the works. Just be reassured with that. And be listening for more news on that through your local FSA and other outlets as well. Good talk, David. Thanks for helping us get this series going, and we will visit again very soon.
Enjoyed the time and enjoyed the coffee, Eric.
You are more than welcome. David Schemm is the State Director of the Farm Service Agency. Once more, be listening 2 weeks from today for the next installment of FSA Coffee Talk here on Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
Coming your way now on Agriculture Today, our weekly wildlife segment with Charlie Lee alongside wildlife specialist, K-State Research and Extension. And Charlie, you've looked today at an effort to conserve the horned lizard, a species we find in Kansas with some frequency, you say.
Yes, Texas horned lizards, or sometimes called horny toads, are distributed across the United States and Mexico. Their range goes north as far as almost the northern border of Kansas, over to Louisiana, Arkansas, and then westward to Arizona and New Mexico. They're commonly found in Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, and have been reintroduced in 19 states outside of their native range. Unfortunately, that species is undergoing some problems, and there's range-wide declines of the Texas horned lizards. We're not exactly sure why the decline is occurring, but there is some research work that points to the declines, particularly in Texas, to their displacement from the native harvester ants, which is a very common species in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, with the imported red fire ants. There's also concern that vegetation change, urbanization, can play a role in that decline, but many of these causes are largely speculative. As you would expect, there are not a lot of research dollars that focus on amphibians and reptiles, and consequently, there's not a lot of work been done on these species. In some states, including Texas, they are a state-listed threatened species. In many other states, they're a species in need of conservation. Now, that's a much lesser role, but it's here in Kansas, species that are in that SINC category, or species in need of conservation. That's a category that allows the state wildlife agency to start conducting work to keep those species from going into the threatened or endangered category. We've talked many times about the importance of trying to keep species from going into threatened and endangered rankings rather than trying to recover those populations before they get very low. So I think it's important that we try to look at all methods of improving the habitat for Texas horned lizards, because they are certainly a very unique species and one that many Kansans in their youth had found and coveted. They do not make very good pets. It's illegal to keep them as pets, but there are many people that have collected them for their uniqueness, observed them for a while, and then released them back into the wild.
And they play an important role in the semi-arid ecosystem then?
Well, they certainly have a role. Their diet is mainly harvester ants, but when the opportunity arises, they're going to feed on other insects. It's kind of unique in that when you watch Texas horned lizards, and they're actually fairly visible, they're a diurnal species out primarily during the daytime, you will see them approach a harvester ant colony and sit there. They time that about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning when the harvester ants start to be most active, and they may eat as many as 100 ants per day. They also serve as prey for many species. They're fed on by lots of different critters, including coyotes, fox. Other reptiles would feed on them, such as rattlesnakes, other snakes, including coach whips that we have here in Kansas. Many of the avian species, hawks and falcons, will also eat them, as well as roadrunners. So, yes, they have an ecological role. As with most threatened and endangered species, let's try to figure out what's going wrong, why that species is declining before it's too late.
There has been, you say, in the state of Texas, a restoration project using a method that typically has not panned out so well in wildlife conservation efforts, and that is translocation of the species. Talk about that.
Well, the majority of translocation efforts have been birds and mammals, particularly game species, with very few translocations of amphibians and reptiles. Texas, because of the popular interest in restoring lizard populations, they conducted a 3-year radio telemetry study to evaluate the feasibility of reintroducing Texas horned lizards into previously occupied areas that had good habitat characteristics. They translocated areas after they restored a 60 to 70 acre sized plot that was starting to be overtaken with brush, primarily juniper and mesquite, turning into a woodland. They restored it back to a mixed to midgrass prairie. They captured lizards, kept them in captivity for a short period of time, and then started tracking 57 lizards for the 3-year period. They evaluated daily movements, the area that they used, sources of mortality, reproduction, and changes in body condition. They're starting to collect information, and I think that information will surprise some people in that we've talked many times about how relocation efforts do not have good success. This relocation effort had good success, and they learned some pretty unique things about Texas horned lizards.
So that success level is sufficient survival and thriving that relocation may work out?
The annual survivalship for the individuals was up to 47%, which is what's reported from natural populations. Unfortunately, that survivorship declined during those 3 active seasons, but the mortality of those lizards was pretty high. Their body condition was relatively stable, and reproduction occurred each year. I think that's the key thing. They were able to reproduce each year, and that indicates that translocation could be a viable option for restoring Texas horned lizard populations in previously occupied areas of their range.
Once more, it's the Texas horned lizard found in Kansas and other places in the central third of the United States, and a study in Texas which is evaluating the approach of relocating lizards to attempt to build their numbers. Charlie, we appreciate the report. Charlie Lee, Wildlife Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Charlie, our guest every Tuesday right here. And with that, our time's away for today. Thanks for listening in. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.